group of criminals is sent to a prison in the Mongolian countryside to serve their sentences. What they don't know is that what awaits them is far more than monotonous labor. The prison harbors a horrifying secret. To establish absolute authority, the guards go to great lengths to torment the prisoners. They prepare a dog bowl for each person, and the instructor demands that the prisoners eat their meals like dogs. A short-haired woman merely complains a bit and immediately receives a beating. Her body is smeared with red jam. The female instructor threatens that if anyone violates the rules twice, their sentence will be extended by a month. At this point, all the prisoners choose to comply. In the dead of night, when everything was quiet, the male instructor, having nothing better to do, decided to mess with the sleeping prisoners, only to unexpectedly find an empty bed. Who would have thought that someone would choose to escape on the first day? However, this prison is so remote that after running the entire night, he still couldn't escape the mountainous area. In the end, he was caught by the guards who were lying in wait. The escapee was in big trouble now, as the male instructor beat him up in front of everyone. To set an example, the instructor punished the escapee by confining him in the dog cage for 3 days and warned the remaining prisoners that if anyone else attempted to escape, their roommates would face the same punishment. In the following days, these prisoners suffered even harsher torment, but what they didn't know was that in a secret tent somewhere in the prison, a female instructor was gently telling a story to a girl who was curious about why she was there, while the female instructor coaxed her. She explained that her presence could save more lives. Meanwhile, outside the tent, the prisoners finally received a piece of great news. The instructor announced that the prison warden would hold a meeting today to hear everyone's opinions. However, anyone with a discerning eye knew that this was just a formality. If they really spoke their minds, the warden would just turn around and leave, making their lives even harder. During the meeting that evening, the prisoners behaved unusually calmly. Knowing that the warden left satisfied, they gathered together to whisper among themselves. If they continued to stay here, both their bodies and minds would eventually collapse. These individuals finally made a bold decision, which was to escape collectively that very night. After waiting until midnight, just as the prisoners were about to act, a car suddenly drove into the prison. Looking through the window, they saw 2 men hurriedly entering the secret tent. Immediately after, the male instructor came to the dormitory, and everyone chose to pretend to be asleep. The male instructor quietly woke up Ah Chiang, who was usually more obedient, and took him out of the dormitory. The others who were pretending to sleep immediately sat up, utterly confused about what the male instructor was up to. At this moment, someone noticed that the guards standing outside had all been withdrawn, which was definitely a perfect opportunity for a jailbreak. They couldn't wait for Ah Chiang any longer, and quickly put on their clothes to slip out of the dormitory successfully. However, what they didn't know was that Ah Chiang had already been taken to the secret tent, where someone injected something into his neck. Soon after, Ah Chiang was possessed and began to attack Baruto. Suddenly, alarms blared in the prison, and the door of the secret tent was pushed open. Zombies rushed out, biting anywhere. The squad that came to support fired, thinking they had wiped out all the zombies. However, they were surprised when someone rose from the pile of corpses. The prisoner Ah Chiang, who had turned into a zombie, killed the entire squad. The prisoners attempting to escape were caught in the chaos. At this moment, they also realized something was wrong and began to flee desperately in all directions, but their speed was no match for the zombies. Soon, someone was unfortunately knocked to the ground. Meanwhile, the warden, being rather cunning, hurried back to his office, found a box. And while everyone was fighting the zombies, he quietly approached a truck. He shot and killed a zombie that was following him. The warden quickly jumped into the truck, his arm bleeding, but he couldn't worry about that now. He slammed the accelerator, leaving the male instructor standing there, roaring in frustration. Unknowingly, the sky had already brightened, and a prisoner was sprinting through the forest. Suddenly, a dark figure pinned him down. It was the male instructor who had escaped. Now, with zombies being the greatest threat, everyone chose to put aside their hatred. They saw a truck parked on the road from a distance. In this remote area, they needed to find a means of transportation, no matter what. A few bold prisoners quietly approached the truck, only to find 2 zombies hidden inside. The instructor and the prisoners joined forces to fight the zombies. But unfortunately, the commotion was too loud, attracting all the surrounding zombies, and in the panic, the car keys were also. The group had no choice but to abandon the plan to seize the truck and continue to run frantically, eventually escaping back to the familiar prison. At least there were buildings here to provide shelter, which was better than competing with zombies for speed in the wild. At this point, the instructor once again assumed a superior attitude, prompting several prisoners to simultaneously take action. They had long been displeased with the instructor, and not killing him was already a result of great restraint. The long-haired man leading the group asked, "What exactly are you doing in the prison?" The male instructor wisely adopted a cooperative stance. It turned out that a secret experiment was being conducted in this prison's hidden camp, and all the prisoners would eventually become test subjects. However, an unexpected incident occurred yesterday, leading to the current situation. The male instructor was not involved in the plan. He was only responsible for providing the test subjects and was unaware of the specific details. The prisoners felt that the instructor didn't seem like a good person, so they found a rope and tied him up, leaving 2 prisoners to guard him while the others went to sleep in the bus. From last night until now, they had hardly rested. Right now, they have no mind to consider their next move. In the woods, there are 2 prisoners who have fallen behind. They are being chased by zombies, but fortunately, they eventually escape back to the prison. The two bring the latest news to everyone. The virus is highly contagious, and there are zombies everywhere outside. Now, everyone has to consider their future actions, as staying here will surely lead to death. At this moment, the instructor brings an important piece of news. There are several similar prison camps nearby, and as long as they join forces with them, they will surely be rescued. However, only the instructor knows the exact locations, and with this bargaining chip, the instructor can't help but feel smug again. Just then, the soldier who had just escaped back to the prison suddenly starts vomiting. A few people gather around and discover zombie scratch marks on his neck. Without a doubt, the soldier has unfortunately been infected by the zombie virus, and his transformation is only a matter of time. Several prisoners rush forward to deal with him, but they are firmly stopped by a long-haired man. The soldier suddenly stands up, snatches the whistle from the instructor's neck, and quickly runs outside. Knowing that he doesn't have much time left, the man chooses to sacrifice himself to attract the zombies, to help everyone gain a chance to survive. Although the prisoners in the car find it hard to believe, they still unanimously flee outside. Their only hope is to find a truck. Unfortunately, the distraction caused by the soldier is limited, and they are still attacked by zombies. As they flee, prisoners keep falling, but a few finally manage to find a truck. The long-haired man fearlessly runs to the front to start the engine, while the female driver inside is already terrified. He started the vehicle before his friends got in. Everyone watched desperately, and could only run towards the camp again. The instructor untied his hands. He didn't escape, but went to the secret tent in the prison. The female instructor was still taking care of the little girl. She is the key to developing the vaccine. The male instructor knocked her out directly. She then left the tent with the little girl. Her combat skills surpassed the prisoners, wielding a giant axe and slaying several zombies along the way. Unknowingly, the two had already reached the neighboring camp. At this time, the long-haired man, along with two companions, had escaped back to the previous prison. Just as they were checking the map to find an escape route, the female instructor suddenly walked in. The long-haired man didn't do anything to her. He just wanted to obtain more valuable information. The female instructor, understanding the situation, led them to the control room and showed them the entire experiment process. It turns out that not long ago, scientists discovered a certain parasite that could affect the human brain and behavior. To control this viral weapon, they began extensive experiments to develop an antidote against the virus. After relentless efforts, they finally extracted the first vaccine from the little girl's body. The prisoner, Ah Chiang, was the guinea pig for this experiment. However, unexpectedly, the virus was more terrifying than imagined. The vaccine had no effect and instead caused the virus to mutate. It could make people lose their sanity, and became even more contagious. The only way to control the virus was to find that girl, but unfortunately, she had already been taken away by the male instructor. After hearing this, the long-haired man chose to trust the female instructor, and decided to help her retrieve the little girl, while the female instructor chose to stay in the prison. He told the long-haired man the location near camp, thinking the others must have gone there to take refuge. It wasn't long before the long-haired man arrived at the neighboring camp based on the address, and the female driver who had escaped earlier was also there. He originally wanted to talk with the male instructor, but the warden who had escaped that night suddenly pushed open the door. Seeing the food on the table, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Considering the warden's handgun, the others could only sit still, not daring to make any sudden moves. The warden told his former subordinate that after being bitten by a zombie last night, he gave himself a vaccine. However, just as he finished speaking, the virus in the warden's body flared up again. The male instructor seized the opportunity to spring into action and snatched his handgun. The female driver, not caring about anything else, pulled the girl away to escape. She planned to leave immediately. The sound of the car starting alerted the instructor, and the long-haired man rushed to grab the handgun, leading to a scuffle between the two. Meanwhile, the female driver, who hadn't driven far, had a change of heart. She suddenly stopped the car and decided to return to the camp to rescue the long-haired man. At this moment, Conan had successfully seized the handgun and pulled the trigger without hesitation, the gunshot instantly attracting the attention of the zombies. However, the long-haired man did not kill the instructor, because he knew that he couldn't escape the zombie siege on his own. The two joined forces to engage in a life-and-death struggle with the zombies. Just then, the female driver arrived in the car, urging them to get in quickly. However, the number of zombies was increasing, and a few zombies reached the driver's seat and viciously bit the long-haired woman. The instructor was also surrounded by zombies and couldn't break free. He had no choice but to start the car immediately, taking the remaining survivors to escape the camp. When the car reached a safe area, the long-haired woman realized she couldn't hold on any longer and chose to leave the group before she turned. In the end, the long-haired man and the female driver, along with the little girl, reached the city limits, only to find the entire city had become a wasteland. It seemed their journey of escape was just beginning. That concludes the entire content of the zombie camp. After watching this series, there's a lingering feeling that something is off. There wasn't a single character name mentioned, and even the main character's identity was uncertain, with the story never really capturing the main point. Archie doesn't recommend watching the original film, perhaps due to the Mongolian language. The boxing champion couldn't find a reliable translation. Alright, that's it for today. If you enjoyed it, please continue to follow, and we'll see you in the next episode.